Okay, welcome back, everyone, once again to another presentation of the keys to the Mazzaroth. And in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the sign of Akrab, or the scorpion, with the children of Israel going into the wilderness with scorpions and serpents. All right, so here's the layout of the heavenly luminaries, the constellations, and this just familiarize ourselves first of all with the scorpion. Now, last week, in our last presentation, we talked about Libra, and I'm just going to give a quick recap of that, and then we'll build upon that and go into the sign of Scorpio. So last time we learned about the scales being a universal symbol for the law, and we saw that after the buildup of the children of Israel, when they went into the wilderness, they multiplied, or actually before they went, I'm sorry, I'm confused. When they went into the wilderness is when they became, it was the formation of the bride and the promise that was given to Abraham that his seed would become a great multitude. And this was the development of the bride that was taking place. And then we had the children of Israel being delivered after 400 years. And we see this signified in the constellation of Centaurus. And we learned that Centaurus, before the Greek philosopher Pindar, it was not a centaur as we have it here. This is a Greek perversion. This was around the 5th century BC. And before his time, this was the form of a perfect human being. There was none of this mixture of man and beast. And we see in connection with this man, we see the Southern Cross. And we talked about how this may very well represent not so much a cross as it does the letter Tav, which represents a sign or a seal, a covenant that the children of Israel were entering into with the Most High. And we saw how this letter has a value of 400, and how it was after 400 years that Moses was sent to deliver his people. In fact, while he was still in Egypt, he had slew an Egyptian, and that when that became known, of course, he had to flee. And he fled to Midian in northwest Saudi Arabia. And we also learned about this wolf, how this wolf symbolizes the Egyptians who were harassing the children of Israel. And now Moses comes and he's going to deliver his people from these wolves. He's going to deliver the sheep. That's what shepherds do. They deliver the sheep from the wolves. And also, we talked about, of course, the crown. And that's one of the minor constellations with this sign of Libra with the wolf and the crux. And the crown being a symbol of royalty, and how Israel became a royal bride to Yahuwah. And now we're going to move forward to the next sign, right in line with the sequence of events that have happened with the children of Israel, from the development of the bride to the giving of the law. And then after that, they were to go into the wilderness, but they rebelled time and time again. The 10th time was when they rebelled and not going in to take the land of Canaan, when they saw the giants. And now they're having to go back into the wilderness with scorpions and serpents. And here you can see the scorpion. Now, the minor constellations of the scorpion is Ophiuchus, who has his foot on the head of the scorpion, on its heart, on Taurus. And another minor constellation is Serpens, the serpent that he's holding. And of course, that serpent is trying to reach that crown. And then we have Hercules, the mighty one, just above Ophiuchus, with a club or a rod in his hand. And he has his foot on the head of Draco, the dragon, on bended knee, and he's wearing the skin of a lion that he has conquered. And so that's the layout of the constellations. Now let's look at the Hebrew elements on the Mazzaroth wheel that have to do with the sign of Scorpio. So the sign in Hebrew is Akrab, and Akrab means figuratively a scourge or a nodding whip. It has to do with chastisement, and the children of Israel are now being chastised with scorpions. The tribe associated with this sign is the tribe of Dan. Now, again, there are some other people who will align these tribes a little bit differently, and I'm okay with that. I'm not being dogmatic here, but I'm sharing with you how I have aligned them, how some others have aligned them in the same way as I have. And I align them in accordance with the meaning of that tribe. What I've discovered is that through the meaning of this tribe, you see what the story is about in this sign regarding the children of Israel when they were judged. And here we have Dan, whose name means judge. It means to contend. You have Ophiuchus. He's contending with the serpent who's trying to reach the crown. So there you have this element of contention taking place, striving to minister judgment. Well, yeah, the children of Israel were definitely judged. And in fact, all of them, except for the younger generation of 20 and younger, their carcasses fell in the wilderness. None of them made it into the promised land except for Joshua and Caleb. Okay, and then the Hebrew a month that's associated with this sign is bull, and it is has the meaning of, in the sense of rain, increase, produce, food. So this sign has something to do with rain, with increase, with produce, with food. And then the Hebrew letter, which is so significant, is the letter Vav. And it represented a tent peg, also a nail, a hook to secure. And the deeper meaning is to pierce and to connect something. It's the Hebrew conjunction and, to connecting two things together. There's this connection taking place. Okay, and then you have the glyph, which is the letter M with a little arrow attached to it. And you'll notice how this glyph is very similar to the glyph for Virgo. They're both represented by this letter M, with Virgo having the tail end of the M being a symbol of a fish, and here we have the symbol of an arrow, a piercing arrow. And so this tells you right here that there is a correlation. There is these stories relate to one another. It's the woman whose seed is going to crush the head of the serpent. And we see this represented over here with Ophiuchus crushing the head of the scorpion, a symbol of rebellion. And above him, you have Hercules crushing the head of Draco the dragon. All right, so what I always like to do first off is to see where else in the Bible this sign, this scorpion symbol, is represented. And so we go right here to our first text, Deuteronomy 8:15, that says, who led thee through. So Moses is now recapping the history of the children of Israel in Deuteronomy. Who led thee through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein were what? Fiery serpents and scorpions. Exactly what we see in the heavens. We see a scorpion and we see a serpent. And drought where there was no water, and brought thee forth water out of the rock of flint. In 1 Kings 12:11, it says, and now whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. And so here is this symbolism of the scorpion having to do with chastisement, right? As the children of Israel were being chastised for their rebellion. Again, in Ezekiel 2:6-8, it says, and thou, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns be with thee, and thou dost dwell among scorpions. Who's he talking about? It says, be not afraid of their words, nor be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. Oh, must be talking about the children of Israel. And thou shalt speak my words unto them, whether they will hear or whether they will forbear, for they are most rebellious. And so they can't get away from this. The children of Israel, throughout their history, unfortunately, the majority of their history have been a very rebellious people. And that is why they are represented here by this scorpion, because they have been in rebellion against the laws of the Most High. And of course, here you have this scorpion attacking, if you will, the scales, the law in Libra here, right? It's rebelling against Yahuwah's laws. That's the symbolism right here. And Moses, represented by Ophiuchus here, is going to put down constantly. He had to put down this rebellion and chastise his people and then intercede for them, right? Time and time again for their rebelliousness. Again, we have in Luke 10:19, turning to the New Testament. And here is a promise where Yahushua says, behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, just as Ophiuchus is treading on this scorpion right here, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. And so what we're going to find is that this sign of Scorpio has to do with this rebellion, with chastisement because of their rebellion. It has to do with the power of the enemy, all the power of the enemy, right? I mean, those who are scorpions, take heart, because it's not all bad, because you have Ophiuchus on your side who's putting down that rebellion, and you also have the mighty one of Israel, Hercules, the mighty one, also in your defense. But there's a battle going on here, and perhaps personally you can see this as a spiritual battle. And the scorpion personalities tend to be rebellious, whether it be in a good sense or in a bad sense. They have this rebellious nature about them. I've seen this many times in people that I know that are related to this sign. But here we are given a power. We were given the promise, behold, I will give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, just like Yahushua did when he was here. And then again in Revelation 9:3 is another reference to scorpions. And here it says, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months. Okay, well, now what's all that about? Why the symbolism of the scorpion? So we have all these other texts related to the scorpion, and we see that it's related to rebellion. And so this has to do with rebellion. It has to do with chastisement. The sign of Scorpio then is a warning message. This is, as I understand it, this is how I see it. The sign of Scorpio then is a warning message to Yah's people at the end of time before the second coming of Christ to not rebel against his commandments, as the scorpion is rebelling against the law here, as the children of Israel did, or they will be chastised with scorpions, which is very fitting. Israel was rebelling, as the scorpions are a symbol of rebellion. And so they went into the wilderness with like company. That's who they relate to. All right, so that gives us some insights now into the symbolism of the scorpion. It has to do with rebellion. Now let's look at the actual constellation in the night sky. And here we have this the constellation of Scorpio, comprised of 13 stars. And we're going to find this number 13 has a lot of biblical significance. Let's take a look at this. So first of all, let's count the stars with me. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right there in the stinger. 13 stars. And you see that the tail of the scorpion, now we learned also, I believe in our last presentation, that the tail, the significance of the tail in the Bible, Isaiah 9:15, the ancient and the honorable, he is the head, and the prophet who teaches lies, he is the tail. And so the tail is a symbol of lies. Those who are supposedly representing the Most High, but they are speaking lies, as the dragon did, as Satan did. And it's right in the midst of the Milky Way. Now, what is this? If we just take a brief look at biblical cosmology, this is the firmament here. And now we call it the Milky Way, but it's also referred to as the Great Rift. Well, what is a rift? If you look up the word rift, it means a crack, a split, or a break in something. And I speculate, might this have occurred during the, as a result of the war that took place in heaven? Satan, represented by the scorpion, who's in rebellion against Yahuwah's law. When they were cast out of heaven, did this perhaps occur then? Or is this something that perhaps that is man-made? In the late 1950s, there was the Operation Fishbowl, where they sent up several nuclear bombs to try to penetrate through the firmament. And of course, they couldn't. And then you have a startling statement, even though she was speaking allegorically, Hillary Clinton after she lost the election, she says, I know it's hard for you to believe right now, but you are all standing under a glass ceiling. And thanks to you, it's got about 16 million cracks in it. That's what she said. Did she mean that literally as well as allegorically? Right? And so she talked about this hardest glass ceiling here with cracks. And that's the actual meaning of the word rift, is a crack or a split. And so I don't know if this was as a result of the war in heaven. Perhaps we really did do this ourselves when we were trying to penetrate the firmament, or maybe it's something else. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there for your consideration. Okay, let's take a look now at the biblical significance. Oh, by the way, to the left of that statement there, the constellation there, that is Sagittarius. And he is the one who is aiming his arrow at the scorpion, at the heart of the scorpion. So all this battle with that's going to be our next sign, Sagittarius aiming his arrow at the heart of the scorpion. This is all taking place right here in the midst of this great rift. All right, so the biblical significance of the number 13. The number 13 is symbolic of rebellion and lawlessness in the Bible. The first occurrence of the number 13 in Scripture is in reference to 5 kings who served the king of Elam. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. So this is the first occurrence of the number 13. So using in the Bible, so using the law of first mentioned, 13 is defined and is connected with rebellion. It is in Numbers of chapter 13 where the 10 spies brought back an evil report, which caused the children of Israel to have to return to the wilderness with scorpions and serpents for 40 years, saying, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. The land through which we have gone to search it, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of a great stature. That just so happens to be in Numbers 13, a number of rebellion. And it is in Revelation chapter 13, where you have the beast from the sea and the beast from the earth, 2 apostate powers that persecute God's people. The dragon, interesting enough, is found 13 times in the book of Revelation. Furthermore, all the names of Satan are divisible by 13, and I don't have room here to go into all of that. In Romans 1, Paul lists 23 things against sinful men. The 13th is haters of God. That would be those who rebel against him. They're haters of God. They rebel. And Nimrod, whose name means rebellion, just so happens to be the 13th generation from Adam. And then we can look at America. America began with 13 colonies who rebelled against England. So isn't that interesting? All right, so now we're going to take a look how this sign of Scorpio is, has to do with national judgment that fell upon Israel. So Akrab, as I mentioned earlier, means a scourge or a knotted whip. According to Strong's concordance, a scourge is used for chastisement, figuratively of national judgment. You see, all you got to do is just look these things up, and you can piece this story together. It's I know it's profound, but the way I discovered it all is quite simple. You utilize the law of first mention. You look up the meaning of the words, the meaning of the Hebrew meaning of these words, and you discover these things. Then, of course, the Hebrew letter equivalent and its numerical value. You got to look all that up too. The sign of Scorpio then is a fitting symbol for the children of Israel who were chastised for their great sin at the border of the promised land in rebelling against Yahuwah. God did not design that his people Israel, this was a quote I found online, God did not design that his people Israel should wander 40 years in the wilderness. No, he wanted to take them straight in. He promised to lead them directly to the land of Canaan and establish them there a holy, healthy, and happy people. But those to whom it was first preached went not in because of unbelief. Their hearts were filled with murmuring, rebellion, and hatred, and he could not fulfill his covenant with them. Another quotation I found online, for 40 years did unbelief, murmuring, and rebellion shut out ancient Israel from the land of Canaan. The same sins have delayed the entrance of modern Israel into the heavenly Canaan. Oh, isn't that an interesting thought? In neither case were the promises of Yahuwah at fault. It is the unbelief, the worldliness, the unconsecration and strife among Yah's professed people that have kept us in this world of sin and sorrow so many years. Wow, that's a very interesting statement. Okay, now let's go again a little deeper into this Hebrew name of Akrab for the scorpion, figuratively a scourge or a knotted whip. Scourge is used for chastisement and figuratively of national judgment. Thus, ancient Israel was chastised for their rebellion in the wilderness, signified by the sign of Scorpio, the scorpion. Now, what's interesting is you also have a foreshadowing of the Messiah in these signs, and I'm just going to briefly share here how the sign of Scorpio is a foreshadowing of Christ and how he was chastised. And so, in like manner, Christ was also chastised. He is a second Israel, chastised not for his own rebellion, but for the rebellion of the whole world. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. And with his stripes we are healed. Behold, we go up to Jerusalem, and all things that are written by the prophets concerning the Son of Man shall be accomplished. For he shall be delivered unto the Gentiles, and shall be mocked and spitefully entreated and spitted on, and they shall what? Scourge him and put him to death. That is the sign of Scorpio. That is the definition of the scorpion, symbol of someone being scourged, chastised, and a symbol of death. The sting of the scorpion is a sting of death. And so he's going to experience this. And the third day he shall rise again. Again, we have in Luke 23, but they shouted, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Then he said to them the third time, Why? What evil has he done? I have found no reason for a death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. What? You just said you found no reason for death, and now you're going to chastise him? And so here you see the weakness of the character of Pilate, even though he knew that Yahusha was an innocent man, yet to please the people, he chastised him. And so we have here this symbolism of the scorpion and Ophiuchus crushing its head and its stinger rising up to sting him in the heel. And of course, that should alert you to Genesis 3:15 about the seed of the woman would crush his head and he would bruise his heel. And you have it signified right here. And it's not just dealing with a scorpion, it's actually dealing with a serpent here, right? He's holding a serpent. He's contending with the serpent. All right. Okay, so Israel wanders in the wilderness with scorpions and serpents. In all the ancient myths, Scorpio was a cursed and warlike constellation, a fitting representation of the curse that fell upon the children of Israel who had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years with scorpions and serpents because of their rebellion and lack of faith. The scorpion is a symbol of death. The Mayas refer to Scorpio as the sign of the death god, or Hades. In the New Testament, Paul equates death with that of a sting. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. And so there is a close association between the sting of death in the scorpion and the law represented by the scales in Libra. The scorpion is grasping hold of the scales, rebelling against the law, and Paul tells us that the wages of sin is death. Because of the rebelliousness of the children of Israel, an entire generation from 20 years and upward perished in the wilderness. And then here you have, of course, to the right, the golden altar, calf altars that still remains as a monument of Israel's rebellion in the wilderness. And here there are 12 of these Apis Egyptian bowls that were inscribed on this altar near the foot of Mount Sinai. Now, what's interesting, this is a very well-known, perhaps the most popular star cluster, Messier Object 80. And it is right, you can't see it represented in this outline here, in this picture. It's right in the mouth, it's right at the mouth of the scorpion. and it's comprised of several 100,000 stars. And I speculate, might this massive concentration of stars located near the mouth of the scorpion have some spiritual significance? All those who have been swallowed up by death because of their rebellion against the holy law of Yahuwah? Maybe. And now let's look at the heart of the scorpion. So here is Antares, a little video footage of it. This red variable star, just like the heart of the scorpion that's beating, if you will. And here is Antares. And Antares, marks the heart of all those who are rebellion against the law of Yahuwah. Antares is a fiery red and green variable and pulsating star. It is one of the 4 royal stars that once marked the equinoxes and solstices 5,000 years ago. Its name means rival of Eris. Now, Eris, or Mars, is the ruling planet, i.e. wandering star, of Aries, the ram. And so it makes sense that this star represented, which is the heart of the scorpion, represents Satan, really, that first great rebel in heaven, and his rival is the ram, right? The ram that was caught in the thicket that Abraham offered in place of his son, representing Yahusha. And here you have a little video footage of Eris. And so you can see how these 2 stars are very similar in color. And so Antares means rival of Eris, or the rival of Aries, the ram, which is Yahusha. The Hebrew name of Aries, or Mars, Adam, meaning to show blood in the face. In Greek mythology, Aries was the equivalent of Mars. Now, this is interesting, who was conceived by Juno without prior relations with Jupiter, i.e., he was born of a virgin. On the battlefield of Troy, Ares was wounded by Diomedes. The god uttered a terrible cry and fled back to Olympus, where his father Zeus had his wounds dressed. Well, that's kind of similar to Yahusha when he was on the cross and he cried out, with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, that is my God, my Elohim, why have you forsaken me? Right? So isn't that interesting? Very similar. The Greek, there's a lot of perversion going on here, and these true stories have been corrupted by Greek myths, right? And so we just kind of throw it all out. But I think many of these Greek myths are actually pointing to a more ancient truth that has been lost sight of and corrupted. Okay, next slide. Now here, this is the Butterfly Nebula, and it's located just beneath the sting of the scorpion. It's very, very close to the sting of the scorpion. It's right beside it. And that's a symbol of death, right? The sting of the scorpion is a symbol of death. And this is believed to have been ejected from a dying star approximately 2,000 years ago. Now, I did some research, and I found that the butterfly is universally recognized as a symbol of renewal, resurrection, and immortality, and new life. And so right beside the symbol of death, you have a symbol of life. Now, I like to look in. When I can get a really good, clear image of some of these nebulas, I like to zoom in to see if I can find anything that might be significant, because I've seen pictures of things in these nebulas that are quite astounding. And this was, when I first discovered this, I was really astounded. I could not believe my eyes what I was looking at in this section of the butterfly. And I've zoomed in on this section right here, over here. And after I started looking at this for a little while, I began to recognize, like, wait a minute, this looks like a face right here, tilted a little bit. And his mouth and 2 eyes, his forehead, I mean, that looks like a human face. And then I look down here, and it's like, this looks like a book. I mean, this is the edge of the book with its pages. I mean, it's almost perfect representation of a book. And it's either an open book, because look, it extends over here. This is a straight line, right? And so it's either one book that's opened, or perhaps there's 2 books here. And right here, you can see the shadowy outline of fingers on top of the book, holding it right here. Now, if you look a little bit closer, I didn't see this at first, but I continued to look at it. And then I saw this person right here. I'm outlining its figure. Blonde, whoops, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Blonde hair, neck, face, eyes, a white garment, something around its neck with some color, some red, some yellow, some green or something there. This looks like a person as well. And then I came across this guy. This guy looks a little scary to me. Right here. An eye, possibly a head, a mouth, possibly. I don't know, maybe. But definitely this one, and most definitely this one. This one is the clearest one right here to me. And so what is the significance of this book here? And this butterfly that's next to this sting of death? And the butterfly being a symbol of renewal and resurrection. So in Revelation 20, 12, and 15, it says, and I saw the dead. Now, Scorpio is a symbol of death. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. So again, I speculate possibly this might be signifying the book of life that is used in the judgment to determine who should be found worthy of eternal life and immortality. That's the symbol of the butterfly. So this just blew my mind. It's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is here. I mean, is that really there? And how long has it been there? You know, has no one else ever seen this before, ever discovered it? I think I'm the first one. I don't think anyone has ever seen this. And so here you go. You can, think about it yourself and see if you think this might have, this might really be something here. But it's very interesting to me. Okay, now let's look at the Hebrew letter correlation for Scorpio. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper. So put on your thinking caps and let's take a look at this. So the early Semitic pictograph of the letter Vav was a Y-shaped nail. So right here, the paleo, or the tent peg. In this next period of Israel's history, signified by the sign of Scorpio, the children of Israel dwelt in the wilderness in their tents for 40 years, which were secured with tent pegs, obviously. And the Shekinah glory of Yahuwah also dwelt in his tent, surrounded by a linen curtain, both of which were also secured with tent pegs. Vav has the value of 6, the number of man who was created on the 6th day. The pronunciation of the number 6 has the hissing sound of a serpent. 6. That's interesting. Man is appointed to labor 6 days and to rest on the 7th. Thus, I find it interesting that this period in Israel's history is represented by the number 6, followed by the Hebrew letter Zion, with a value of 7, and our next sign of Sagittarius, wherein Joshua gives the children of Israel rest. So that's interesting. The number of the beast in Revelation 13, of course, is the number of a man, 666. Judgment was pronounced upon the earth in the 6th chapter of Genesis. Again, this whole sign of Scorpio has to do with judgment and with death and with chastisement. Noah was 600 years old when the flood occurred. Man has been in rebellion against his creator for the past 6,000 years. According to the Zohar, the Hebrew letter Vav symbolizes the serpent in Genesis 3 and has a direct connection to the Messiah. This is seen in the gematria for the serpent and the Messiah. And here you have their letters and how the numerical value for these letters for both the serpent and the Messiah is equal to 358. Very interesting. Thus, the letter Vav and the sign it signifies will have something to do with the serpent who has caused man to rebel against his creator, and the promise of a Messiah to come who would take the sting of death upon himself to redeem mankind. Christ was nailed to a tree in 6 locations: his 2 hands, his feet, his head, and his side, 3 nails representing 3 sixes. He was on the cross or tree for 6 hours. And from the 6th hour, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. So this number 6 and everything that's a sign symbolizes, it's all associated with the letter Vav, with the number 6, with rebellion, with death. It all ties together. All right, now let's take a look at the minor constellation of Ophiuchus. And that's pronounced different ways. That's how I pronounce it. And Yahuwah said unto him, what is that in your hand? And he said, a rod. And he said, cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses fled from before it. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, put forth thine hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand, and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. And so it's interesting that here you have a man, he's picking up a serpent, and here's a rod, by the way, right here as well. And it's overlapping Ophiuchus. Here's a rod, here's a serpent, the serpent becomes a rod, the rod becomes a serpent. You have Moses, he's going to put down the rebellion, he's going to chastise his own people, right? And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, well, here you have a man lifting up a serpent, signifying this sign, with the children of Israel that went into the wilderness. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. So here is this foreshadowing of the Messiah again, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. The sting of the scorpion, sting of death, perishing, and the butterfly, symbol of eternal life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And we've already seen how this is portrayed by these two constellations with the foot of Ophiuchus on the heart of the scorpion, and the scorpion's stinger reaching up to sting him in his heel. All right, now let's look at a nebula that occurs in this sign. So, and the people spake against Yahuwah and against Moses, saying, wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water, and our soul loatheth this light bread. And Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. So we have the serpent right here. For we have spoken against Yahuwah and against thee. Pray unto Yahuwah that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people, and Yahuwah said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looks upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he had beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Okay, so just very interesting that you have a man, and he has this serpent that he's lifting up and contending with. There's so much symbolism going on right here, just a lot. It's not just this part of Israel's history either. It's Yahushua's death on the cross being portrayed here, and also, as we're going to get into here very shortly, this goes even deeper to the war that took place in heaven. But in this constellation of Ophiuchus, you have a serpent nebula, the snake nebula, Bernard 72, in the constellation of Ophiuchus. And it most definitely looks just like that. Yahushua said, you serpents, you generation of vipers, how can you escape the damnation of hell? But thus says Yahuwah, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible be delivered. For I will contend with him who contends with you, and I will save your children. Well, here he is contending with the devil, right? It's just, he is the one that he's contending with and is going to save our children. That's a beautiful promise. And then you have this same contention between the Christ and the serpent, man and the serpent here. Yet Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil. Just above that, we read, for I will contend with him who contends with you. And here you have Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, Yahuwah rebuke you. Now, in the constellation of serpents, the serpent, you have this right here. Now, this is a very beautiful nebula and has the appearance, doesn't mean that it is, but it's been nicknamed, it has, has the shadowy figure of an eagle right here in its head. and its wings, imaginary wings, and its head here, with a nursery of young stars here being born, is how astronomers speculate. This is like a nursery of stars. The psalmist declares, he shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. Maybe that's symbolizing this right here. The eagle being symbolic of divine guidance and protection. The stars beneath the eagle may possibly be representative of the children of Israel. And already, we've gone through enough of these, especially in the sign of Virgo, that the stars, and also my introduction, that the stars represent the children of Israel. We saw that, in Abraham's, when he was told to count the stars, so shall your seed be, and Joseph's dream of the sun, moon, and 11 stars, the stars represent his people. And here, perhaps, you have an eagle spreading its wings. And you have, of course, in Exodus 19:4, you've seen how I delivered you from the Egyptians, and I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you unto myself in the wilderness. So maybe this is what this is about. Now, when you zoom in, so here is the eagle, supposedly, right? And so I zoomed in right here. I didn't see anything else anywhere else. This is the pillars of creation, but I don't see any spiritual significance in any of that. But I zoomed in this, and I turned it right side up, and look what I found. Does anybody see anything there? This is what I see. I see a man right here. His sideburns, right? Neck and body. And I see a fiery serpent-like figure here, reaching up and curling around his mouth right here, a couple eyes maybe. And of course, we read in Numbers 21:6, so Yahuwah sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. And so this is located in the constellation of serpents, which is being held by Ophiuchus. So you got a man and a serpent, and a man and a serpent. I believe this represents the fiery serpent. Really cool. Okay, now here's something else that's interesting. So this is Ophiuchus again, drawn a little bit differently, but he's holding up the serpent and he's stepping on the scorpion. And it says Johannes Kepler's original drawing from De Stella Nova from 1606. So this is pretty old, this is over 400 years old, depicting the location of the Stella Nova in the heel of Ophiuchus, marked with the letter N. And that's right here. And this right here is supposed to be this nova. And here is a false color composite. It says first observed, so this is supernova SN 1604, first observed with the naked eye on October 9th, 1604, viewable with the naked eye until March of 1606. Like, wow, that's a long time. But it was in the sky and located right in the heel of Ophiuchus. Now, we know the heel is very significant, right? And so check this out. Supernovae were seen by the ancients as an omen of insurrection. It is interesting to note that this occurred in the tail of the serpent. The tail is symbolic of one who tells lies. And, I quoted this verse earlier. The ancient and the honorable, he is the head. The prophet who teaches lies, he is the tail. And there have been 5 recorded novas in this vicinity. 134 BC in Scorpio, and 4 in Ophiuchus in AD 123, 1230, 1604, and as late as 1848. So 5 times, right in the heel, you have this nova, which is a symbol, an omen of insurrection. Of course, this is what we have with Satan, who rebelled in heaven. And so I think there's some spiritual significance to these novas that keep occurring in this location between the Ophiuchus and or the Scorpio and the serpent. All right, so now, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to show you the bigger picture here of the war that took place in heaven and how all of this is being symbolized right here, and it tells us what this war in heaven was about. So let's read a few texts here. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads, and his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and it cast them to the earth. Okay, let's take a look. Here you have a dragon. Here's his tail, and his tail is wrapped around Ursa Minor. And so that could be what that's referring to. In our next slide, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this minor constellation and what it represents, but I believe it represents a third of the angels that fell from heaven. Now, other people who talk about this constellation, just about everybody else, almost without exception, I think I'm the only one that gives a completely different interpretation of this. They will say this represents a minor fold, a greater fold. It is a fold, right? It is a congregation, but I don't think it's the assembly of or the congregation of the righteous. I think it's the congregation of the wicked and all those who rebel against Yahuwah. But I'll get into that a little bit later in our next slide. The ancient honorable, he is the head, prophet that teaches lies, he is the tail. So I believe that this tail that's wrapped around Ursa Minor symbolizes the lies that Lucifer, Satan, told, a third of the angels, right? He used his lies to deceive them and cause their fall along with him. He's being cast out. He's on the sides of the north. That's where he wanted to dwell, on the sides of the north, and he's being cast out. And his tail is drawing a third of the stars of heaven, the angels of heaven, with him. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world with his lies. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And again, we read in Isaiah 14:12-15, how are you fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How are you cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of Elohim, and I also will sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. Well, you can't get much closer to the north. This is the North Star right here. And so he is on the side of the north. On the sides of the north, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. And then in Ezekiel 28, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of Elohim. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in your ways from the day that you were created until iniquity was found in thee. And then, of course, you can also look in Jude 1:6, talks about those who left their habitation, their first estate, the angels left heaven. And then John 44 talks about how Yahushua says, I beheld Satan, fall from heaven, something of that nature. And so let's look at all of this together. So this represents the law. This represents those who rebel against the law. This is a battle that's taking place between Ophiuchus, Christ. He is the one who says, I will contend with him that contends with you, and I will save your children. That's none other than the Savior. An angel can't save us, but Yahushua can, right? And then you have this mighty one, the mighty one of Israel. He is the one who is conquering the dragon. The war is between this person and this person, but they're being represented in two different ways. Here, represented by his foot on the scorpion, a symbol of rebellion, putting down the rebellion, those who are rebelling against the Most High's laws and contending with the serpent. He is preventing the serpent from reaching the crown, from taking control, because he wanted to rule. He wanted to exalt his throne. He wanted that crown, right? This is Corona Borealis, the northern crown. And that's the crown that's in heaven. Heaven is in the north. And he was dwelling on the sides of the north. He wanted to exalt himself above everyone else and be like the Most High, right? But he can't, he's not going to get it. He's being held back by Ophiuchus. And then you have Hercules again, crushing the head of the dragon. And then you have the dragon, like I said, with his tail wrapped around Ursa Minor. And this dragon, as the night season, goes from sundown to sunrise, and throughout the year, this dragon, this is a circumpolar constellation. So it's going to go round and round and round like this. He is like surrounding the throne of the Most High right here, trying to keep all of us out. He's like guarding the gates, if you will, symbolically speaking, spiritually speaking, not literally, but spiritually speaking, right? He is going round and around like this. He doesn't want us to get to heaven. He is trying to do everything in his power to prevent us to get to this point here. But that's not going to happen. All right, so now let's look at this next slide here, and let's orient. Now we're going to turn this around a little bit. Ophiuchus, let's put Ophiuchus, he's the king of heaven, the celestial king. Let's put him right side up. Okay, now he's right side up. Here he has his scepter. His scepter is extended out to Cassiopeia. This is the freed woman in Aries. She has been set free. Favor has been extended to her, just like favor was extended to Queen Esther when she appeared before the king unannounced. But he extended the scepter, and that's a symbol of favor. And now she is sitting in her throne on the right side in heavenly places, as Ephesians, I think, talks about. But notice how the king here has his foot on the North Star, on the pole star. And this constellation here, Ursa Minor, is upside down. Over here, in conjunction with Cepheus, Ursa Major, the greater fold, it's right side up, right? But this one here, he's upside down. This is not representative of Yah's people in any shape or form, in my opinion, because anytime you have a foot directly above something else, whatever is beneath that foot has been conquered, right? It's been conquered. It's been conquered. It's being stepped on. So there's no way this, in my mind, that this could represent like the 144,000 versus the great multitude in Ursa Major or anything like this, or the two houses of Israel. I don't see it that way at all, because the symbolism in my mind is so clear. This is upside down, and it's in connection with the king of heaven right here. It's being cast out, and Lucifer, Satan, the dragon, has his tail wrapped around it. That's exactly what we read in Revelation 12, that his tail drew a third of the stars and cast it to the earth with him. Now also, so Kokab, this is this star right here. This is the principal star, the only named star in this constellation, Kokab. And that just so happens to be the Hebrew word for star or stars, figuratively a prince. And it says, now is the judgment of this world, now shall the prince of this world be cast out. So I believe this star represents the prince. And this is, and he is the leader of this fold, of a third of the angels being cast out. But this constellation represents the stars. I mean, that's the meaning of this star, that the only named star in this constellation means stars. And so the dragon with his tail drew a third of the stars. Now, the other thing is, it says a third of the stars. So unfortunately, I don't have the whole picture of Ursa Major, but I measured it out, and this is approximately or exactly 1/3 the size of this fold. And so we're going to get more into this in the sign of Cancer. That's down the road a ways, second to the last sign. And we'll go into deeper meaning significance of both these constellations. But I just wanted to mention it here because this is in connection with the sign of Scorpio, with Hercules here, the mighty one, crushing the head of Draco the dragon, right? And putting down that rebellion. All right, and so now let's look at Hercules a little bit more. So I have him as the mighty one of Israel. Hercules is shown here on bended knee, wearing the skin of a lion that he has slain. In one hand, he holds a mighty club, or a rod. In the other, the triple-headed monster, Cerberus, with his left foot, is squarely positioned on the head of Draco the dragon. The identity of this mighty man is easily discernible when we turn to the scriptures and the story that is signified in the sign of Scorpio. As Scorpio represents the time in which the children of Israel were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, the natural candidate for this mighty man, this great warrior, can be none other than that of Moses and or the mighty one of Israel, Yahuwah himself. In the book of Acts, Stephen describes Moses in this way. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was what? Mighty in words and in deeds. And Isaiah 124, therefore says Yahuwah, the Yahuwah of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, So he's referred to as the mighty one of Israel. Ah, I will ease me of mine adversaries. Yep, he's definitely got adversaries, right? And avenge me of mine enemies. Yep. He's stepping on the dragon, he's stepping on the scorpion, he's dealing with the enemies of the children of Israel. He is the mighty one, he is their deliverer. I will ease me of mine adversaries and avenge me of mine enemies. Okay. So, and Yahuwah shall go forth, what? As a mighty man. He shall stir up jealousy like a man of war. He shall cry, yea, war. He shall prevail against his enemies. And this is all being signified in the sign of Scorpio. Lift up your heads. Now, this is, I believe this is a text that's referring to when Christ first ascended, after he was resurrected, and after Mary saw him in the garden. He said, I ascend to my God and to your God, right? To my Elohim and your Elohim. And he went up into heaven. And I believe this verse right here represents the reception that he received when he entered into the gates of heaven after his resurrection. Lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be ye lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is this King of glory? Yahuwah, strong and mighty. Yahuwah, the mighty one in battle, right? And so he is a man of war. He is mighty. He is, in my mind, definitely represented by this mighty man, Hercules, wearing the skin of a lion that he has slain. And of course, Satan is as a roaring lion roaming about, thinking whom he may devour, but he has devoured the lion itself, right? He has conquered it. He's conquered the devil represented by the lion. He has conquered the devil represented by the dragon. He has conquered the devil represented by the scorpion, symbol of rebellion, a great rebel in heaven. Now let's look at the corresponding Hebrew tribe. So the standard of the camp of Dan shall be where? On the north side. We just finished talking about the north, where all this battle is taking place. By their armies, and the captain of the children of Dan shall be Ahiezer, the son of Amishadai, something like that. Okay, corresponding Hebrew tribe of Scorpio, meaning to judge, contend, plead, to act as judge, minister judgment, to plead a cause, to execute judgment, to requite. Okay, all of that we've seen now is being represented by these minor constellations in Scorpio and the scorpion itself. When he was born, Rachel said, Elohim has judged me and has also heard my voice, and he has given me a son, therefore called she his name Dan. So it has to do with judgment. Jacob's blessing, Dan shall judge his people. As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be what? A serpent by the way. Well, yep, you have the serpent in the sign of Scorpio, an adder in the path that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backwards. And of course, the children of Israel were bitten by serpents. I have waited for thy salvation. So salvation has to, I just finished going over that, the foreshadowing of the Messiah in the sign of Scorpio, and salvation that's depicted there. Moses, in his blessing upon Dan, said, and of Dan, Dan is a lion's whelp, and he shall leap from Bashan. So now you have the lion coming into play. And of course, you have Hercules wearing the skin of a lion. So the lion is there. Dan was given the symbol of Scorpio, which in the ancient Egyptian zodiacs was a snake. However, when the time came to hoist the symbol of the snake, Ahiezer refused and chose instead the symbol of an eagle. And so this is where people get the idea that Scorpio is that fourth beast around the throne represented in the heavens as an eagle. Now, this wasn't Yahuwah's doing. Yahuwah never said that about Dan. Neither did his mother or Moses or Jacob say any of this about Dan being an eagle. This was in rebellion against what he was told that he was, right? In Unger's Bible Dictionary, it says the standard of the tribe of Dan was of white and red, and the crest upon it an eagle, the great foe to serpents, which had been chosen by the leader instead of a serpent, because Jacob had compared Dan to a serpent. Ahiezer substituted the eagle and the destroyer of serpents, as he shrank from carrying an adder upon his flag. But that's what he was. You are a serpent, Dan. You're not an eagle. You'd like to be an eagle, but you're a serpent. I don't want to be a serpent. You are a serpent. I'm going to be an eagle. And so we have an eagle being represented there. But there are no eagle constellations in the sign of Scorpio. So in defense of those who believe that this sign should be represented by an eagle, here's your evidence that you could use, right? I don't see it scripturally, and I don't see it represented in the constellation itself, in the sign of Scorpio. And so that's my contention that, yes, I can see why you think it's a symbol. I mean, it should be an eagle, but I just don't find that in the heavens itself or in the word of Yahuwah. So you be your own judge on that, pun intended, judge. Okay, let's take a look at the corresponding Hebrew month, Bull, which in the sense of rain. So it has to do with rain, increase, produce of the earth, food. And so do we see this connection with the children of Israel in the wilderness? Well, we sure do. It was when the children of Israel was in the wilderness for 40 years that Yahuwah provided food for them. He rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them of the corn of heaven. And now when, well, over here, it says it was 4,000 years ago when the autumnal equinox was occurring in the sign of Scorpio. So 4,000 years ago, the vernal equinox was in the sign of Taurus, and the spring equinox, and the autumnal equinox was in the sign of Scorpio. And that's when it rained for 40 days upon the earth. All right, 40 days and 40 nights, destroying all mankind and produce from off the face of the earth. Noah and his family alone escaped the judgment that came upon the antediluvian world. So we see a connection here, the Hebrew month Bull, that has the meaning of rain and food, and how in the wilderness, the children of Israel, were given food. It rained manna, it rained quail, all these other things, right? And so that was depicted here. But on a deeper level, we also see this rain that occurred when the equinox, the autumnal equinox, was occurring in the sign of Scorpio. All right, now let's take a look at festivals observed in the sign of Scorpio, and that occurred in this month of Bull. So there were no feasts of Yahuwah observed in this month. However, Jeroboam, the first king of divided Israel in the north, set up a rival feast on the 15th day of the 8th month. King Jeroboam was afraid that those who lived in his kingdom in the north would still go down to the southern kingdom of Judah to worship at Jerusalem, since that was where the temple was located. Interestingly, Jeroboam's name means the people will contend. And so it's just amazing how many times these things keep lining up like this, because that's the contention, taking place between the serpent and Ophiuchus. I will contend with him that contends with you. There's this contention. And the people were contending with Elohim and rebelling against him. So over and over again, this symbolism is always going to work out. It's just amazing. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. So we're back to that again, to the worship of calves. That was symbolized in the sign of Scorpio, right? They were in rebellion against him, and they were worshiping the golden calf. And here he's bringing back the worship of the calf again, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Interesting. And this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like unto the feast that is in Judah. And he offered upon the altar, so did he in Bethel, sacrificing unto the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places which he had made. And so today, there are rival feasts and holidays, aren't there, that are set up in opposition to the feast of Yahuwah. 2 of those feasts occur in the sign of Scorpio. This sign is known as the house of death, when things begin to die in the fall. 2 of the rival feasts celebrated in the sign of Scorpio are Halloween and All Souls Day, both revolving around death. So isn't that interesting? When the children of Israel went into Canaan, they were not to inquire after their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? Even so will I do likewise. And so they were cautioned against this. And here they are, the people most rebellious, right, doing rebellious things against Yahuwah. Whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy God, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other one he put in Dan. So it's also interesting that the opposing and related sign of Scorpio is Taurus. the bull, the calf. So isn't that interesting? Now, Scorpio is a water sign. So this is really interesting too, because there are a lot of stories revolving around water when the children of Israel, after they left Egypt, right? So there was the parting of the Red Sea. There were the bitter waters at Marah. There were the 12 springs of water at Elam. There was the split rock from which Moses struck and water came out. Those who were worshiping the golden calf, when Moses came down and saw what they were doing, he grounded the calf into powder and he threw it into the waters and made the people drink the water. There was a brook at Mount Sinai that descended from the mountain. And then, of course, you have the Jordan River crossing, right? All this being signified in the sign of Scorpio with, being a sign of water, a water sign. And then, of course, you had the flood of Noah occurring when the autumnal equinox was in the sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio is rightly represented as a water sign. So many stories having to do with water. Okay, now we're going to go deeper. Let's take a look now at these two similar glyphs for the sign of Virgo and the sign of the Scorpion. Now, it's traditionally believed that this sign represents the maiden. The M represents the maiden. Okay, if M represents the maiden, then what's this? They have no answer for that. Like, well, the Scorpion, there's no woman in this sign at all. So it can't be a maiden. What is it going to be, right? So both Scorpio and Virgo are represented by the letter M, which suggests a close connection between the two. One with a fish attached, the other with a stinger protruding from it. The fish in the Virgo glyph symbolizes the children of Israel, the seed of Abraham. They are likened to fish. In fact, in Jeremiah 16:16, I have the reference right here. It says, I will send for many fishermen, and I shall fish them, right? The house of Israel, out of all the places where they were scattered. And then you come into the New Testament, and what does Yeshua say? First thing, the first two that were to follow him, which were Peter and Andrew, and they were fishermen. And he said, come and follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men, fulfilling this prophecy. And so that fish symbol represents God's people. The letter M for both signs, especially the glyph for Scorpio, has been a subject of much speculation for thousands of years. M for Virgo is believed to represent the maiden. This sounds plausible. However, this letter reappears in the sign of Scorpio and is unaccounted for. I believe the mystery of the letter M in both glyphs can easily and satisfactorily be explained when we turn to the scriptures. The mystery lies in the first promise given to our parents in the garden after the fall. And I will put enmity between thee, the serpent, and the woman, right? And between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. And so you have a woman, and you have the serpent, the scorpion, the serpent that Ophiuchus is holding up, right? The Draco, the dragon that Hercules is crushing. Both these signs are related. It was the seed of the woman in Virgo who crushed the head of the serpent in Scorpio. The letter M for Scorpio and Virgo may be applied to both the Messiah, which is Mashiach in Hebrew, and Moses, or Moshe. Moses was a messianic figure that led the children of Israel in the wilderness for 40 years. The value of the Hebrew letter M is 40. Throughout Scripture, the number 40 uniformly relates to a period of probation, trial, and chastisement. This number is also closely associated with Moses, with Israel, and the Messiah. You have the 40 days and 40 nights it rained in Noah's flood when the autumnal equinox was occurring in the sign of Scorpio. You have the 40 days of repentance, Teshuvah, beginning on the first day of Elul in Virgo. You have the 40 years Moses was in Egypt. You have the 40 years Moses tended sheep for his father-in-law, Jethro, in Midian. You have the 40 years Moses led the children of Israel in the wilderness. You have the 40 days Moses was on the mount to receive the law. You have the 40 days Moses was in the mount after the sin of the golden calf. You have the 40 days the spies searched the land of Canaan. You have the 40 days that Yahushua was tempted in the wilderness. And you have the 40 days Christ was seen of his disciples after his death and resurrection. So a lot of 40s, and it's all symbolized in the sign of Scorpio. And by this letter, this glyph for Scorpio, letter M with the arrow attached to it. Okay, now let's look at the corresponding disciple. Who's it going to be? I suggest that it is Judas Iscariot, and this is the reason why. So you'll recall when he was in the garden and the mob came to arrest him, that Judas gave him the kiss of death. And while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Yahusha to kiss him. But Yahusha said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? Right? This was a kiss of death. And of course, Scorpio is all about death. And Scorpio is known as the house of death because of the sting of the scorpion. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? Signified in the sign of Scorpio was that period in Israel's history when the carcasses of that entire generation fell in the wilderness because of their constant murmuring and complaining, and the foreshadowing of Christ's victory over Satan, symbolized by the crushing of the scorpion's head by Ophiuchus, the serpent holder. It was Judas who was possessed by Satan who betrayed the Savior with the kiss of death into the hands of the mob and religious leaders in Israel, i.e. the scorpions that are most rebellious. Remember, Ezekiel says, I know you dwell among scorpions, how Israel is the most rebellious people. An insurrection against the King of Heaven. We read, now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover. And the chief priests and the scribes thought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12, and he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And Judas betrayed Christ into the hands of scorpions. That's what he did, symbolically speaking. And thou, son of man, be not afraid of them, neither be afraid of their words, though briars and thorns be with thee, and thou dost dwell among scorpions, be not afraid of their words, nor to be dismayed at their looks, though they be a rebellious house. And so I think Judas is a very appropriate disciple for the house of, for the sign of Scorpio, the house of death, the symbol of death, the sting of death. Okay, and lastly, we have promises to those who are scorpions. Here are your promises. Here are the promises that are given to you. But thus says Yahuwah, even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible shall be delivered. For I will contend with him that contends with thee, and I will save your children. I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Notwithstanding in this, rejoice not that the spirits are subject unto you, but rather rejoice because your names are written in heaven. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. This crown right here that the devil is trying to take from you. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, my Elohim, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my Elohim and the name of the city of my Elohim, which is New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my Elohim, and I will write upon him my new name. Beautiful promise. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. There's our wolves, in connection with the sign of Libra. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils, and they will what? They will scourge you in their synagogues. So these are all beautiful promises that are given to those who are scorpions and to all of us, of course. These are promises that are signified in this beautiful sign of Scorpio. Even though it represents death, there's so many beautiful things about it. The beautiful butterfly, this contention of Yahuwah contending with the devil on our behalf, not letting him take our crown, not letting him overthrow his Father in heaven, right? Conquering the dragon and the angels that were in rebellion against the Most High. A lot of good things are taking place here. It's not all doom and gloom for the scorpions. So that concludes our presentation. This is my my website, my poster, I have a full-size poster. This is a 24 by 32. That's the size that I like the most. It's very clear and readable. A lot of people like to display it in their homes and churches and whatnot. Over 300 scriptural references tied with all these different constellations and the zodiac signs. I have a summary of the 12 signs with scriptural references that go along with the summary for each sign. And then I have a smaller representation of Ptolemy's 48 classical constellations. This is my website. I have a lot of articles that will give you even more detail than I gave you in this presentation today, that you're welcome to go into those and read up further for additional insights. That's my webpage. I have several videos on my video page, as well as on my YouTube channel. My Facebook page is Science of the Hebrew Mazzaroth. Also, Instagram is mazzaroth.info. And if you'd like to reach out to me, have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. My email, robertwilliams0824 @gmail.com. And that concludes our message.